Today I want to talk about my 5 favorite crochet stitches and why. Number 1, I absolutely love the double magic ring. So if you are familiar with beginning your circles, then you need to know there's 2 different ways that you usually do this. You start off either with a chain and then you work back into the first chain and then work through that circle that you've made, but that usually leaves quite a big gap. So the better way is usually to do a magic ring technique. Now the magic ring, you wrap the thread around twice. The double magic ring, however, you wrap it around 3 times. And by giving it that extra loop around, you have 0 hole in the center of the beginning circle. It is the tightest way that you can make that beginning round, and that's why it's my favorite. Number 2, the invisible decrease. If you're familiar with the regular decrease when you're making your amigurumis, it works, but the thing with it is that you can actually see the decrease. It kind of creates this little bit of a bump. So if you don't want to have that there and you want to minimize people being able to actually see where you've done your decreasing, you're going to want to use the invisible decrease technique. And the invisible decrease, you go through the front loops only when you're doing the decrease. And I will have a link down below for videos on how to do each one of these techniques for you. With the invisible decrease, there is no bump. It's very seamless. I do want to say, however, that decreasing has a time and a place. When you're making amigurumis and you're working on a more flat row, for instance, if you're making some clothes or something like that, and you're working back and forth, you're not working in the round, then using a decrease is going to be your best bet, because you need your piece to look the same on both sides. Whereas with an invisible decrease, because you're leaving that back loop unworked, you're going to notice it on the back side. But if that's on a body of your amigurumi, you're not going to see it, because that's where your stuffing is. So just keep in mind that if you are doing a flat piece, whether it's a scarf or it's some sort of clothing for your character, a decrease does tend to be better for that. So again, has a time and a place. The third stitch I want to talk about that's a favorite of mine is called the picot. And the picot is basically where you chain a number of chains and then you do a slip stitch in the first chain. So it'll be like chain 2, slip stitch, and first chain. And by doing that, you create this little triangular shape. This is this technique that you can often see done on the bottoms of dresses to make them have this kind of a jaggedy look. Or I've seen it used on the ends of leaves as well. So if you're making a leaf and you want it to have that nice pointed end, you can always do that technique there on the end. Just a fun little flourish that you can put on decorative things for your characters. So if you want to make clothing and whatnot, a picot is a nice thing to have in your back pocket. The fourth thing I want to talk about is when you are doing striping and you want to join different colors. Being able to do this without jogging is another one of the techniques that I enjoy. With jogging, it leaves a nice solid line wherever you've done your color changes. But without jogging means that when you come around and you're going to change your color, you're going to go ahead and do a slip stitch in the first stitch that you do with the new color. So you've changed your color, you do a slip stitch, and then you continue on with single crochets around, and then you just keep going with single crochets until you come to the next color change. The first one you do is a slip stitch. That creates not a giant leap of the new color. It starts it off at a much lower level. And the last of the 5 crochet techniques that I enjoy using when I make my amigurumis is working in the back loop only. And when you do that, it's really neat because you create this outer line. And it's one that I use when I'm making my sunflowers. I work in the back loop only, and that way on the front and the back, you have a nice crisp line that sort of hugs the petals. Another way that this has worked out well is that when you work in the back loops and you leave those front loops unworked, you could use that ridge to make like a skirt. You can attach additional yarn on it and then start crocheting around on that front loop only and then building out from there. So it's really fun to use. I hope you've enjoyed learning about 5 of the crochet techniques that I love using when making my amigurumis. What are your favorite crochet techniques to use when you do your amigurumis? List those in the description down below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Thanks, guys.